Under this head cover comes a driver from a big manufacturer, but it doesn't come with a bbig manufacturer's price tag. Let's give it a go and see how it performs. So the driver in question is this from PXG, the 0211, and it is their budget model. The reason it's budget model is because it's coming in at £239. Now that's not a price point we would probably associate with PXG. When we compare it to other drivers in their line, maybe prices that we might be a little bit more expectant from them, we're seeing that the 0311 Gen 6 is coming in at £469, but at £239, how is this driver going to perform? Because it's got that big brand name on it, but it's got a little brand price almost. So we want to see how it's going to perform, and we're going to stack it up against one of the better models later on. But just taking an initial look at it and finding out a little bit about the driver is quite interesting. So when we take an initial look at the driver, there are some differences that we will see from maybe the more expensive models from a PXG or some of the other big brands. The first thing that's noticeable when you actually look at the head is that there's no movable weights. It's just one cutout, and we tend to see this from more budget drivers or cheaper drivers. We don't see any weights that can be moved around the club head. It does come with an adjustable neck, so you have the loft sleeve on there, so you can change it up and down in loft, but then there's nothing to slide the weight around. It does have some technology obviously to boast about. It has a variable face design, which means that throughout the face, if you sort of look behind and inside the driver, there's different sections with different thicknesses in there, and that's for PXG to be able to move mass around the head so they can make it a little bit more forgiving. And it's also designed in that way to help create ball speeds, which is where also the face design, the titanium alloy face that they have put on this, again, is to make sure that they're delivering the fastest ball speeds off those off-centered hits. So it's designed probably and aimed at a little bit more of the player who wants a little bit more forgiveness and also wants a little bit of speed off those off-centered hits. It's quite easy to launch up, and it's overall quite a pleasant looking driver. So now we know that there's not as much technology as we may see from one of the more expensive counterparts, no movable weights, and it just looks to me, it looks good, but it looks a little bit more basic, and I would say that's generally what we see from maybe a budget driver. They just don't look as like there's as much going on when we see them. And as we look into maybe comparing it to one of the more expensive models, even just the finer details, when we see here, I've got the two head covers for the budget one and the more expensive one. The more expensive one, you might not be able to make it out on here, but this is a leather head cover and it feels softer, and even the way the colours blend into the actual leather, it just looks a little bit more premium. It feels that little bit more premium. Not to say that this one that is the head cover that comes with it doesn't feel premium, you know, I'd be happy with that every single day, but it's just not got that leather feel to it. It's still got the soft touch, but it's just little aspects like that as where when you pay that little bit more, you tend to just get those finer details. Even something like the wrench that the club comes with doesn't come in a nice presentation box that you get with the 0311, where you've got your movable weights and you've got those in this nice box that the wrench comes in, as where the wrench comes, you know, just on its own with the 031. But those are details which, you know, once you've actually bought them, I probably wouldn't even be that bothered. A lot of people end up changing the head cover for a course you've played, so is that even relevant? One of the things that it does actually feature on both of them, which I think is a brilliant idea, is a little quick stick magnet, so you can just pop it on the car and it's going to stay there, so you're not forever losing head covers if you play buggy golf. So there's not loads of technology in this club, but I want to have an initial hit now just to see how it feels, because one of the other things that they've done is a high module frequency design, which is designed to give you a better feel and a better sound off the club face. So I want to hit some initial drives just to get a look at how it actually performs in terms of that sound and feel, and what it looks behind the golf ball and looks in the hand. Because, you know, when I think of budget drivers, sometimes I think, oh, well, they're not going to be the best looking things, but we're going to do that, and then at the end of the video I want to put it up against its more expensive counterpart and see how it stacks up at that, because if I'm saving £230 and it's performing just as well, it could be the driver that you want to go for. let's give it an initial hit. So my initial thoughts, just putting it in first time behind the golf ball, it's got the sort of matte black finish to it with its little X logo to mark where the center of the club is, and then it's got the sort of halo ring around it with the PXG logo in the bottom corner. It looks good. It doesn't look sort of cheap. I wouldn't use that word, you know, we are saying it is a budget driver, but it doesn't look cheap. It looks sort of sleek, looks sort of quite stealthy almost, like the plane. But when you compare it to maybe sort of the 0311 that's got the carbon on the top, again, you can just see that sort of air of premium about that one, but definitely looks good. No sort of face markings that are jumping out. There are some that are etched onto the face, but behind the golf ball you can't really see them, and overall it looks quite pleasant. Head shapes look really good. Let's just give it the first hit and see if that marries up to what I'm seeing. Not my best strike, but felt not too bad, to be fair. I think for me as well, when you're buying something like this at 239, the big thing is that you've got the PXG logo on it. So whether you buy, you know, a Rolex, let's say, you'll have one that's an entry-level Rolex, and then you'll have one that is the, you know, limited edition or super expensive one, but you've still got a Rolex. So, you know, with it being a PXG driver that is at 239, if someone says to me, what driver are you playing, and you say PXG, you've already got that air of the big brand about it. So it doesn't sort of maybe hold as much of a, I wouldn't say negative connotation as a way of thinking of it, but if you said something maybe like oh, I'm playing a Ben Ross, or you know, another brand that costs a similar price around that £200 price mark, people might think, oh, you've got that driver, what are you playing that with? As where, like I say, if you say you've got the PXG driver in your bag, you don't mention it's an 0211, straight away people are thinking, oh, PXG, that must have cost you a few quid. So it's got that sort of air about it, and it doesn't look too out of shape for that sort of thinking. Oh, that was mega. That sounded like a carbon driver then. Well, we've just knocked it on the green at, how far's the hole? 330 yards, so nothing wrong with distance. That felt good. Let's hit another one. I do like the look of like an all blacked out driver. I do think there's something about them that just looks super, super sleek. You can just sort of see where the T mark is on here. So that ever so slightly, but first couple of hits there, initial thoughts, feels good. It sounds very nice. It's got an air of a carbon sound about it now. The 0311 has got the carbon crown in it, but this is just all pure titanium, but it sounds a bit more like that I would expect that to sound, and feels that way. It doesn't feel too tinny, but let's hit a few more and get a good idea about this thing. Very interesting. I think this is actually probably the first PXG driver I've ever actually hit and reviewed. It's actually quite interesting. That's an interesting one, because I've just felt like I've hit that rubbish, and it's not a million miles away from the green. That definitely got that forgiveness aspect, because those, I've hit two now that have been a little bit heely, and they've still managed to launch up in the air. The feel for, you know, the player who would be looking for that launch, it's definitely got that. Again, that is wild, but that is just completely me. Can't do miracles, this driver. If you do hit it out the head, out of the shaft, it's still going to go sideways. That's user error though. There's some distance in there for sure. It's got me thinking though, what other drivers will be in that sort of 239 price mark? I'm just gonna have a quick Google and see what we can get for 239. So I've gone on to one of our local golf club retailers, Clubhouse Golf over here in the UK, and I'm just going to scroll through and see what we can get at around the £239 model. So at 209 we're seeing ZX7s and ZX5s from Srixon Golf. We then get to a 229, which is a TaylorMade M4, 249, which is a Maverick from Callaway. Bear in mind, these are all previous season's drivers, as where the 0211 is still a current driver. Then we get into the Cleveland Launcher XL Lite, which is at 249, Cobra Radspeed 249. So the first current driver that I've come across is the Wilson Dynapower Titanium £349. So that's £110 more than what that PXG is coming in at 239. Good shaft options as well for this one. When you look at it on the website, you can get upgraded shafts to make it more. If you were putting things like the Fuji Ventus in it, you're looking at £200–300 extra. But things like the hazardous smokes are coming in there. There's other Al dealers that are standard, so it's got good options, and at 239, like I say, a lot cheaper than the rest that's out there that aren't current. So I've had an initial test now out here on the golf course and actually spent a little bit more time with it at the driving range, hitting some more shots. And overall, from the categories that we're looking at here, feel, sound and forgiveness, definitely feels good. Like I say, it's got that air of sort of a carbony feeling driver to me. Feels very much like a Ping G430 or G425, which obviously a lot of the Ping technicians and club makers went over to work for PXG, so you can sort of get the same feel and similarities there. Looks wise, looks good, that sort of matte out finish, looks sleek, looks stealth, looks sporty, quite understated, looks good behind the golf ball. Quite a sort of large footprint for a head, so if you were someone who's looking for a bit more forgiveness and wants something that you look down and it looks inviting, doesn't look sort of too hard to hit, it's definitely got that air about it. And then forgiveness wise, I would say I've hit quite a few iffy shots with it where I've sort of heeled it a little bit low on the face, and it doesn't seem to be really causing too many big drop-offs. It's not really carving too much. I was expecting to see a bit more movement, but it was pretty straight from those bad shots. Obviously some curvature in there, which is human error, but it was pretty decent. Distance wise, I think obviously it's not aimed for that low spinning player and looking for monster distance, but it seems to be, what I can gauge from just eyeballing it, it looks to be somewhere there or thereabouts from what I would normally hit it. So overall, initial thoughts, feel, sound and performance, pretty good. It's, for 239, you can't really pull your nose up at it. But now we're going to put it up against the 0311 Gen 6 to see how it stacks up against that one. Remember, that driver's at 469, so £230 worth of difference. Let's hit some shots. So how did the 0211 stack up against the 0311? Well, overall, pretty decent. We collected some data with 10 shots of both driver, and what we found was that ball speed, it was coming in 4 miles per hour slower than the 0311. Now, premium materials have gone into that one. The faces are slightly different, so it has come off ever so slightly slower off this one. The spin rate was nearly identical, which is good to see, but then carry, it comes in at 11 yards shorter. Now, £230 is the difference between those two drivers. If I was a pro golfer playing for my career and wanted to know that every yard counts and every yard matters, and it still does at, a beginner, a mid-handicap, a higher handicapper level, but £230 to see that I get a driver that still works, because one of the things that I would notice from it, that I felt like I was really straight with it. I felt like I was hitting a lot of fairways when I was testing and collecting data, or whether I was out on the golf course. I generally found that even on a miss hit, I felt like I wasn't too far out of play. It felt either on the fairway or just off it. So knowing that, yes, it's going to be slightly shorter and it's coming off that little bit slower, but I'm saving myself £239, I think it does exactly what we want for a budget driver. If we think of other models in this price point, we might not get something as good. You maybe get something second hand that's a year or two old, but it's not a brand new driver. So overall, for a budget driver, I think, we know it's not getting everything that we see from the premium model, but we can't expect that from the price point. But overall, a pretty decent driver, and one, if you've got that sort of cash that you want to be spending, I'd definitely be having a look at it and giving it a go, because It does work. It's a little bit shorter, but it works. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember, why not check one of the other ones out here, and as well, stay tuned for the 0311 review coming soon.